I guess we can just kind of jump in. But so I'm Brian. We met upstairs. But so we had a conversation. I'm sure David's filled you in, but we had a conversation with David, Bill, and Laura 2 weeks ago, just to kind of give students, like, fill them in on what's been going on and what this change is going to look like, and what the future of our dining services looks like. And we're all very excited to meet you guys finally, and get to actually talk to the two of you. But yeah, so I was thinking we could open up with just intros. I think everybody should know that was here last time at least, should know Bill and David and Ben.
Do you all know Ben Solowitz?
Maybe?
Ben oversees campus planning. He's kind of the guy that's going to be driving this whole Commons project.
Well, yeah, if we could hear from...
Sure. My name is Jon Tomkins. I'm going to be taking over for Bill, essentially. Being the director here for overseeing all the dining services starting in July. And actually before that, I'm going to help out a little bit too. You'll start seeing me more and more. And as of right now, I work for the catering at College of St. Rose in Albany, New York.
And I'm Don McQuarrie. I'll be helping John. I'm a district manager, so I cover schools in Western Mass and upstate New York. John and I have been working together now for about 5 years, so we're excited to actually start to work soon in Bennington. And today's really, for us, today is sort of day one of what will be a pretty busy next 2 or 3 years. You know, I think for us, something is probably going to be different every year as we go through this. So we're excited to get to work and happy you guys to take some time to meet us.
So is this your guys' first time on campus then?
No, not the first time on campus, but today is really the first day that we've sat down and we said, okay. We had to do something right now to be ready to open in September. What's it going to be? So today's that day. And we've probably spent the better part of the last 6 or 7 hours just meeting people, saying hi. People ask us very detailed questions that we don't have very good answers to because we only started 6 hours ago.
Well, hopefully we won't tire you out
Yes,
too much
you
more.
will.
That's your job. So, yeah.
I just had a few questions to open up with, and then last time, for those who weren't here, the format was it was basically just open question Q&A the whole time, pretty casual. But yeah, so I guess my first question was David's talked a lot about, like, how your guys' proposal to Bennington for the new dining services was like something else and just spectacular, and that you guys were really excited for to have us as a school that you're working with. And I guess from you guys, like, why is Bennington so cool? And yeah, I guess that's...
Well, I think for me, I'll give the same answer I gave this afternoon when I was asked. When we met David, he said that you wanted the kind of dining service that didn't exist yet. And so, candidly, that was a pretty cool project to start to work on. We had an opportunity, you know, you go into a lot of places and it can be a little cookie cutter, and it just doesn't sound like that's what you guys wanted. And so it gives you a chance to be a little bit more creative and have some fun with it. And the more we talked, the more momentum it came, the more excited we became. And I think the plan's a nice one. I can't wait to see it actually start to come together and be built.
I have to go along the same idea. It's just, if we can do something that Aramark hasn't done yet here, and I'm part of it, I'm excited about it, very much so.
I have a question in that regard. So, I mean, obviously Aramark is a company, and you guys have to make a profit. What is it that you see in Bennington that you're going to be trying that's new, and how does that fit into sort of Aramark's larger business plan? I mean, what is this a stepping stone to for you guys?
That's a good question. I don't know that we necessarily thought about it as a stepping stone necessarily. I think for us, the opportunity to really have more, I guess we'll call it like a transparent dining, like in its true form, where we do as much as we can with students, and there's very little that gets done behind the wall in the kitchen, is pretty exciting.
I have some more questions.
By the way, this is the Bennington Free Press. Here they're the,
The student.
Bennington
Hi.
student paper. That's why the cameras.
Good of you to identify yourself.
I have a question. Will Aramark be in discussion with the Commons architects as we kind of look at reinventing Commons and building this new structure by which we all kind of eat and whatnot?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, like, or,
Well, the food service is going to be a pretty big part of what ultimately ends up in this building, right? The idea that there may be food on every floor, and so we have a vision that we've provided for the concepts, and that's an open space, and for the residential dining room, and then whatever other programs it might be, whether it's a pub or a tavern or a more sort of general space that has food in it. So we need to be a part of all of those kinds of discussions. So when we came to the table with the proposal, it had concepts in it. You know, clearly there are things to work out because you don't necessarily understand the physical space. So you present a concept, and then you start to work with David and Ben and the architects to try and blend their thoughts for what the space would look like with our concepts for serving food.
And also, you know, there are going to be technical hurdles that we've got to deal with, the code issues and just logistical, what's the best kitchen design. So we've also hired, or the architects have hired a kitchen consultant. So it's going to be, again, to use that word, a collaboration. And so everyone's going to be sitting and wrestling with both the possibilities, but also the constraints of the building and that great reality of ambition and constraint, and when things really gel, great things come from those dynamics usually.
It really is a lot of back and forth as you start to put the plan on paper. And you're almost sort of negotiating for space, and then what are the power limitations, and you know, I mean, at this point, our plan is really just conceptual. I think we've only in the last couple of days been in touch with the architects, so there's still a lot of work to do.
Will Aramark be involved in financing the renovation project?
I'll defer to David on that. I mean,
Yes, we're talking with them about helping us out with the project, but we're going to depend on the majority of the project's going to depend on serious fundraising. So we're going to be raising a lot of money, but we don't even know yet we don't know what the scale of the project is yet, other than it's total. So we're not into the money question yet, although we're kind of obviously have that on our mind. But again, this is also early stages, so right now we're focused on ambitions rather than more practical matters of budget and so forth. That will hit us soon enough.
I don't want to go too much down the money line, because like you said, you're not, but not to like freak anyone out, but as an institution that's primarily paid for off of tuition, is like this very large expense and new construction project that we're taking on, is that going to possibly increase tuition in the future?
No. All the projects things like this get paid for not with tuition revenue. You can't.
Okay.
And tuition revenues don't actually fund the annual total cost of the college. So a lot of fundraising happens every year for to pay the electrical bill. But a project like this has to be raised.
Cool.
I got a ton of questions.
I do too, but
All right, well, let's do whatever, and if you guys want to jump in, do this as well. So we'll keep going.
Sure. So I know the Sustainable Food Project just reached their pledge goal for a new student-run co-op. They're going to sell food to kids on campus. I read that in 2006, the University of Florida, Aramark, shut down a student-run coffee shop because of a no-compete clause in their contract, where essentially Aramark was the only entity allowed to sell food on campus. Is there anything like that in Bennington's contract with Aramark?
I don't think so.
Think so, no.
Is there a way we could make sure that it's not?
Well, we were all, can I actually flip your question to make it less a kind of journalistic approach, which is actually we were talking about this group. I don't know how many people are part of the sustainable food group here in the room. A lot.
Show hands.
Everybody? But we were just talking about this, and we actually don't know yet what we could do, but one of the things we're thinking about is how do we make a good presence in the fall without doing major capital changes in this building to mark where we're headed. And so we're thinking about, is there a way we can open a coffee shop? Is there a way that we could get your group some kitchen space, working with dining hall staff, making things, selling that product? It's complicated, and I don't want to. We have to talk about this in a real way, and tonight might be just a way of beginning that conversation.
Yeah.
But again, this is sort of to echo what I said 2 weeks ago, is the way this is going to move forward, if we really do this well, is finding the places where everything comes together. So I know you guys are doing stuff, and I don't know enough yet about what that's exactly going to look like. But
we could talk about that some now.
Great.
I mean, if,
Go.
So that you guys hear.
Yeah, that would be terrific.
Sure.
Go.
Yeah. Anyone else who's involved can jump in, but I'll start it off. And that a couple of years ago we started. Scott here came to me, and then Sophie, who were running the food project. Sophie.
Is that Sophie?
That's the best idea ever.
That's nuts.
Who graduated, but the idea of having where's the best cup of coffee on campus, and there wasn't one, and how can we get a better coffee on campus, and then we were throwing around the idea of a student co-op, and then we were like, wait, coffee shop co-op, students sounds perfect. Let's do this, and so now about 2 years later, we're hopefully opening for the first time in like a week or two. And so our vision for it right now, at least, well, first is as a autonomously student-run group. So it becomes whatever the students that are involved and the members of the co-op that are involved want it to be. And coming from the Sustainable Food Project, it has started as a coffee shop and a grocery store of sorts on campus to get initially like bulk grains and baking supplies and all the non-perishable stuff that we can buy and not worry about losing inventory and losing all the money. But then, like when we were talking at the beginning of term, you brought up the idea of like you guys putting in a coffee shop that then maybe could be student run or student managed, and then like last term when we were talking with the architects, the possibility of getting the co-op into the Commons building once it's renovated and finding us a space for that. So I guess that's like the general gist, and we're hoping to keep it. At least my hope for it is that it stays as entirely a student operated and like student run and managed operation, and maybe like merging that with the dining services and with the administration and in some way to like for space and everything. But I think the ability for students to really be in charge of it and be able to make the decisions and see what they can do is a really valid experiential learning opportunity. So that's my pitch on what's going on there.
I think it's also just valid to mention the fact that Bennington Sustainable Food Project is kind of this umbrella student group that has a bunch of different leaders. That we have the co-op and the farm and activities going on campus. It's important to kind of look at as a general sense too.
Yeah, and I think what that shows, because we had such a high turnout when we started this year, is that we are just pretty set on being as sustainable as possible. But I think what that means is just not like having any restrictions. I mean, just like keep a conversation is kind of what I'm going for, you know. It's like, as long as we can just keep talking, and
on that note, I have a question. So we talked a lot about students having a part in how the dining services is run, and I was wondering, with experiences with other colleges, how student conversation and student wants and needs have been met, and what kind of conflicts you guys have run into, if any. Sorry, that was a really big question.
No, I won't remember all the parts of it,
Okay.
and I'm sorry.
I can re-clarify when you...
That's fine. So, I think you guys have a good foundation already, right? You have good communication with Bill. I think, so you've got some informal or sort of communication tools in place, like...
You mean like the napkin?
I mean like napkin notes,
Yeah.
and what...
And Bill's door's just open. Like,
They took the lock off.
I think they took. It was somewhere today, and somebody walked by with the door. I don't remember where it was though. So, but I think to go back to the point, right? So you have a lot of informal means of communicating like that, and I'm sure that just based on what I saw, Bill and the team seem very responsive. But I also think that student advisory committees work really well in terms of helping to set some strategic direction. You know, it's also a place to come when you need some change in the immediate term. But as you start to look at what you want dining services to be, you know, for in a year, in 3 years, it's helpful to get a lot of input on those kinds of things.
I want to add something into that too, because I won't be here, but I want to throw something out that's kind of gone away. The Student Food Committee was actually one of the best tools I had, and I think it was one of the best tools you guys had for actually formally doing things. And I think that that's kind of slipped by the bias. I don't think it's really happening right now, but I think it's something that you guys, whether it's a subset of this group or not, I think it's a really, really, really important thing. I mean, for me, it was a great tool. There was like surveys taken, there was all this stuff done. Information was exchanged in a way that you can't really do with the napkin board.
Yeah.
So I think that that's something that I would consider you guys, you know, putting back together or doing something with. I don't know. I thought it was a great thing.
And we've had the opportunity to go through full-on student reviews. We did this a year ago at Vassar, where a student group got together, reviewed dining, made some specific recommendations, visited some institutions that they considered to be their peers, and then brought back some best practices that we were able to work with them to put into place, you know, in their space, customized for them. At the end of the day, the service that we run should be a complement to what you're here for, which is the education. And so the more input you have, the more you can help us sort of set the direction, I think the better.
Okay.
So we were just upstairs kind of dreaming a little bit. Is there something we could do sort of immediate term and short term for the fall, to not for the dining rooms themselves, but maybe the servery and the salad bar, and rethinking some of that space to do, like we were looking at the walk station, which is like stuck in the corner behind the space, and so, and even just the salad bar itself, which is kind of, it's fine, it works, but so, you know, I'd love you to think about what could we do, and it's kind of abstract right now. We have to look at menus and start having it more tangibly, what are we trying to do, but what can we do that's not going to cost huge amount of money that will be wasted in 2 years, but we can spend some money to make it better and to kind of start this next chapter, to start seeing short term what we might be going towards long term. So I know that's a kind of big abstraction, but if you've got some thoughts or you want to start thinking about it, it would be great. And not just flow, we're thinking about that too, but is there a way that we can, not to use the stations thing, but what if the salad bar were more kind of interactive? you know, where people are putting salads together. I don't know. We didn't get very far, but we're trying to push our thinking so that it's a little more dynamic. And
I mean, you brought up the walk, and I think that was where my first went, was more opportunities to actually cook our own food. And like the hot food can be great. Sometimes it's not what you want to eat though.
yeah,
And then there's one walk, and on a night where it's not the best meal, you've got 3 people waiting for that one walk. And then sometimes someone's like trying to poach an egg in the morning, and they're sitting there just waiting for water to boil, and it's like, God, what are you doing? Just fry it, it's so much faster.
the poach is better.
Okay. But like, yeah, more cooking stations, maybe more options for cooking also,
Yeah.
not just like the wok pan, but
And we'll get into some, you know, maybe some even previews and menus and kind of back and forth on that when we get a little further along.
I'm wondering, Don, if you could tell us a little bit about what Bennington's district is. Like, who else are you working with? And
Sure.
I'm also just curious, like, how the district system actually works.
How the district system works?
Yeah.
That is geographical.
Mm.
You tend to cluster some schools together. And then there are some subsets for independent boarding schools. So the area that we refer to as the Northeast includes New England and New York. I cover Western Mass, which starts for me in North Adams and ends at the New York border.
Mm-hmm.
So I cover what the schools you'll be clustered with are MCLA, Vassar, up in Albany we have the College of St. Rose, Roberts Wesleyan University, Clarkson, out to St. Bonaventure. Quite a few schools in the general area.
And a little more detail. So I mean, you can make this clear to me, but as I understand it, there's sort of like regional cycle menus, and then those are more and more defined into the districts. But so is it the kind of thing where, you know, Aramark lets Joe Greco, our head chef, know Wednesday is going to be pizza day, or they say on Wednesday you're getting cheese and these other ingredients, do whatever you want with it?
No, there are menus that we could follow. We have the ability to customize them at every school. We have the ability to put it on whatever day you want. And there's no restriction on sort of the delivery. So if you think about, you know, how does it get assembled? Does everything have to be built in a pan where there's 24 orders in a pan and scooped out, or could we actually put that together and cook it and serve it way closer to when you're actually going to eat it, so that it can come right off of the stovetop or the oven and onto your plate, and you can go. I mean, those are some of the things we were talking about today, even when we were upstairs. You know, what could you do for the fall so that, you know, the food is almost coming off of the grill or out of the oven and onto a plate for you. And you just took that and added your sides and went out and had a great meal. So that stuff is all, and actually, I've only met Joe one time. He's met a few other folks that I work with. Everybody said great things about him, including Bill, who says he's a steal. So we're excited to work with him. He'll be a key part of whatever we start to plan for the fall and helping us to write the menus as well. Yes?
In the email we all got in like February about notifying us that Aramark was taking over, one thing that stood out was greater purchasing power around kind of Bennington area in terms of, you know, food produce. Could you maybe describe a little more about what that would entail? In terms of like, you know, do we eat more local food, or?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, that's the goal, right? And so we'll start with the foundation that Bill has. We've had some relationships in Vermont that go back a bunch of years. And we like to work with people who are experts. So we've had a relationship with Black River Produce that actually extends from beyond Vermont. I think they get down to Vassar for us as well, where we can go and we can talk about specific crops or products that we want, and then they can help source it through different farms. We've had a relationship with Freedom Foods. They're over in Randolph, Vermont, where they were actually doing some canning, but it's more processing for us. So they were going out and buying tomatoes and making the tomato sauce for us, and then making salsas for us. And we were looking to expand that so that we could extend the season, because we're not here when the tomatoes are good, so we have to find a way to try to use those all year long. So I mean, that's a high level. I can't sit here right now and tell you that I know enough about all the local vendors that I can rattle off a list of names. But we're going to definitely start with the ones that we're familiar with and who Bill has. And what we've tried to do in the past is try to work on things that touch a lot of people, right? That are locally available and abundant. So I'm sure that the Sustainable Food Group will be a big part of that as we go forward.
Me and Nathan have been in contact with a couple of people that are from the regional Real Food Challenge. Have you heard of that? It's basically just get 20% local or organic or fair trade food by 2020. Kind of seems arbitrary, 20%. But I'd like to look into just like seeing, like having a conversation about what effect that would have on our diving services, if it could be possible to be a lot higher than that. Not really necessary, but if we're interested in just like accepting that Real Food Challenge so that Bennington can be another statistic of somebody who has met the Real Food Challenge. There aren't that many colleges doing it.
Yeah, Nathan and I talked about it, and then I called the guy in Boston, blanking on his name. Drew. This is just my bias, because I've worked at Bennington for 17 years, so I'm kind of Bennington. But I'm more suspicious about those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But what I think, and I said this to Nathan, I think what's really great about it, so I think it might be great just to go ahead and do it, because we do other things like that, the climate commitment, the President's climate commitment stuff. But we haven't done LEED certified buildings, partly because a lot of that checklist stuff is actually not as sensible as it should be. So trying to go to the goals of those kinds of things and make it really work for us would be what I would want to start with. So one of the things that I think you're pointing out about it is quantifying is actually, I think, a value in that. And so looking toward a quantification of, I'm a little more suspicious about some of what organic, we all know that there's a wide range of what that means. So you can kind of cheat at times, but
it's definitely like a lot more than just black and white. And
yeah.
That's why I'm against it to an extent of us just like
putting our name on it. But I think it's a really good direction to use as best. And I talked to Drew about that pretty frankly. It's not concerns or suspicions. It's just what makes most sense for us. But I like the intention of it, and I think the discipline of it could be an interesting, and whether we have to reinvent it or not, but and what we're going to be ready for. For me, this is a long-term commitment that we're making as an institution. So how to do it so that we can sustain it, to use that word, and really mean it, and how we can get started, not waste a lot of time, but also do it over time that makes sense. So I think it's something to look at. And I think there are a lot of things we can do with just, our coffee and teas and our beverages, and there are things that we could look at that make more sense, that can do some stuff regionally too for people who are producing here economically, putting our money into the region. This Aramark's just the relationship with Black River. Bill can talk. We haven't been able to really work with them. So this is that alone, that just one thing, and Freedom Foods is a big advance for us. So so we're going to continue the Real Food. If you want to jump in,
yeah,
I don't know if you know that.
There are a few other things that you can take a look at too, particularly as you go into the renovation, you get LEED certification. You can work with the Green Restaurant Association, try and certify the food outlets that we build. And then you can also pursue ASHI stars. It's a combination of the physical space and then the dining program that we put in. So there's a lot of different
Yeah.
different ways that we can.
But I think that
measure.
like more than the initiatives and what it's
Right.
like the
It's the
values
doing,
associated
right,
with
exactly.
it.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, another way of saying what, I'm less interested in having Bennington on a list. We
Yeah.
don't need that institutionally, it's fine.
Yeah.
What we are more interested in is what we do. And so, but if it's a good yardstick, if it's a good exercise and discipline, I had a terrific conversation. wasn't ready to talk about this relationship because we weren't there yet. But I want to follow up and, maybe we can have the conversation with Drew again and maybe have him come visit and learn more about what they're doing. They're looking, from their perspective, they're looking for name brand colleges to sign on to give that movement some, so they could use Bennington in that sense, and that's good. And if our involvement made sense and that we could influence it and it made sense for us to do it, it might be a positive thing for us to use our clout. Even though we're tiny, our name is big.
Help out real food.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, because they're trying to do good, right stuff. So.
Yeah. Related to that, just as a general question about Aramark's policy, because like the idea with the real food calculator is that it's taking a look at the receipts for our dining hall, the food that goes there, and just like seeing like where it leads back to in terms of like farms, the practices of the farms, the distributors and whatnot. Do you guys have an idea like if there's gonna be any way for students to access that information for a sort of thing like this, just to look at the receipts?
I think it's a question that I can't answer tonight. It really is. We don't even have a menu really written. We have a concept of a menu, so to know how it's going to be sourced, and I think to the point that David makes, we can work that out as a part of the relationship. But I couldn't tell you today.
But so does Aramark have a policy that says we will not disclose receipts to student groups or to where we're buying, or because that's
It hasn't come up, to tell you the truth.
yeah, okay.
I know these, Aramark, Sodexo, Chartwells have been more resistant to this process. I don't know that it's so much a corporate decision as much as it's even Bill was having trouble.
Yeah.
There's a lot of practical issues. So
there are some vendors that don't want you to share that information more so than even us.
So I think the answer is we don't know yet, but it's something that's on my plate to continue.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, with the metaphor, sorry. The food at the table on my plate. All right, but it is on my list to continue pursuing, and I think we should talk to Drew, and we'll look at it in the fall and see what's going to be possible. And then if it's not possible, then we'll go to the value. So we won't necessarily be able to sign up if it weren't possible, if there was some policy that we can't deal with, but then let's go at it another way. Let's go after what we're after, and that I know will be possible in whatever way we can meet it.
Yeah.
This question is kind of another vein, and it's from a couple of our readers.
They're doing online stuff. It's very exciting to me.
The question is, are there going to be more meal plan options, such as opting out of the meal plan or having fewer meals on the plan, and is there any possibility of those changes happening within the next year?
So they can't answer that because that's a college thing. So, and I think I talked about this at the last meeting, so, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but we're in charge of the meal plan, not Aramark. So that's something we're definitely going to explore. We have to make it make sense and make it work and know what the implications are, but it's something we're going to be pursuing, particularly as we look at Commons being, if not 24 hours, certainly more than 5:30 to 7. We want to expand for sure hours, and how will that affect the meal plan? So will it happen in the next year? No. It's going to take us time to plan this and figure out, but it will be being looked at over the next year, and something will unfold, whether we even we're talking immediately now about doing some breakfast to go, starting to be a little bit more flexible in what's being offered and how we offer it. So that's also on the top of the list to be looking at and to be doing something about. Is that okay?
That's sort of a related question.
Yeah.
So I live in the Welling Townhouse. That's the only cooperative, housing cooperative. And I was wondering if you had considered building any more investing in any more housing cooperatives that also complete all the purchasing and cooking.
I think what we're really, yes, we're actually, we're talking about it today actually, but we're also wanting to make the dining, we want to look at everything being better and different, not just to be different. So to go back to the Commons project, this should be a place where you really want to come here all the time, because it's not just one thing. It's not just a static thing. But also the question about kitchen capacity here, maybe, and being able to cook here. So, but yeah, we've been looking at some other off-campus properties actually too. But it's complicated with zoning and getting, you know, North Bennington particularly, there's it's tough to get zoning for that kind of situation. Welling was grandfathered. But we're also thinking about other properties. There's a lot of stuff right now on the table that Ben and I and others are thinking about that all are kind of have interchanging parts. So we have a huge need for faculty housing and different kind of faculty housing than we have. Which is more like 2-bedroom apartment spaces instead of single-family 3-bedroom houses, which were great in the 1930s and 40s, but now it's different. Our faculty needs are different. So we're sort of, if you start thinking about what if we had more faculty apartments, what would happen to the faculty houses? Could they become kind of different housing options? So these are all just ideas still on the table, and again, it's one thing affects the other, and part of what we're really at the beginning of, and Commons is the first, we're really in the work of Commons now at the beginning of it, but in it is thinking the whole campus and all of the different pieces. So student housing, faculty housing, other buildings that need renovation and restoration, other missing pieces for the campus. So sorry, it's so long-winded because I think Ben and I think about this every day. But so the answer is short, yes.
I've got 2 questions. One's hopefully kind of short, but the one along the lines of Welling, they're off the meal plan. Longmeadow by Jennings is also off the meal plan, or it can be. And so students that are off the meal plan, or anybody else off campus, if they're on campus during lunch, a lot of people end up just sitting down here and eating when everyone else goes upstairs and eats. Right. So they have the possibility of people that aren't on the meal plan still being able to eat and have that like social dining experience with all their friends that are on the meal plan could be a really important thing to think about.
Mm-hmm. We actually have some thoughts about, call it midway dining spaces that are not quite in the dining halls but aren't also in Siberia, you know. So how we might do that, but that also maybe also just being able to, I know you can buy lunch, but that's also another option which you could do maybe a little more a la carte kind of, I don't know, but we are thinking about that.
The other thing, going really quick, we were talking about all the yardstick stuff and like how to measure how we're doing with the dining services, and then the idea of the student advisory committee, and like maybe the Real Food Challenge could work and we could kind of mold that to make us fit. But I feel like having some way of measuring how, like setting goals for ourselves, whether or not it's taking from the Real Food Challenge or not, but setting goals for our own dining services and saying this is where we want to be in 5 years. We want to have like this kind of food, this percentage of our food comes from local, I don't know, but come up with buying guidelines that we as an institution would like to move towards, and then find a way to measure our progression towards that.
I would love to be, I'd love us to do that together.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love us, those are really wonderfully challenging questions that you're just putting out there, and I think it's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
But how to get it right and not just feel like we need to answer it.
Yeah.
But because I feel like Bennington College playing a role in this community in a more visible and vibrant way in being an economic engine for this area. So supporting the work of people who live here, farming, whatever, I think that's really important. How to do that in a way that makes sense, that we can do and sustain, and that has a tangible quality, that would be one value I would put in there. But I don't know how to do that and how to measure it and how, and I can't, it's great for me to say that, but I don't, decide by myself. So, but figuring out what are the right things and how to, and are they, and being flexible about changing our minds too, that things actually aren't what we want, I think would be really great. So maybe it's not just a student advisory committee, maybe it's a dining advisory committee, and maybe it's a collaborative group that is, let's get some faculty in here and get some staff and students working together. And thinking together and kind of pushing at different from different perspectives. I mean, that's again.
It's almost like we need a baseline to start from to know what we're
trying to do.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
But
well,
yeah, I mean, the idea with the real food calculator, not to keep going back to that, but is to like, you spend your first year figuring out like this is where we are.
Right.
And then you figure out where we want to be, and then how you can get there.
Yeah.
So finding a way to say, to like assess where we are, start like by the end of next year maybe, after 1 year of Aramark's new.
See, that's why I will stop being so veiled on it. I would want to push more, instead of a third and a third and a third or whatever, with organic, fair trade. I think our responsibility to this region actually is lifted in some ways. I don't know what that means or how you would measure that, but I would make it more that, and I know that there's flexibility to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think
whether we could do 20% or not, I don't, that I wouldn't have included in that.
I mean, I think the big elephant in the room is just the fear that somehow by taking on Aramark, we'll become less flexible in our abilities, right?
What do you guys want to say to that?
I don't know. I can understand the fear. I can tell you that the person who's going to represent you the best is going to be Jon. You can look at a school like Vassar, where we have advisory committees in place. We have purchasing priorities set. And if you go into the retreat at Vassar, I was just there yesterday. They featured Benny and Caesar's local ice cream. I mean, Bruce Harms, who works there, he's the president of, I forget that there's a local culinary federation. So our folks tend to have ties to the local community. I mean, to David's point, and the program that we have in place at Vassar places a pretty big emphasis on local and sustainable purchasing. So they do a great deal of work with local farms, and they rely, like Jon will rely on people like me and folks who help with purchasing to sort of take care of the more technical aspects of that, make sure that the food is being handled and delivered safely and those kinds of things. But typically, no, it's not an impediment. And particularly at Bennington, it's been a price of entry, right? It's been no secret from the beginning that this was very, very important. So we're not going to suddenly show up at David's door and say, hey, I get some good news and some bad news. Really excited to get to work, but I didn't mean anything I said before.
Wondering if you could tell us about how Aramark actually interfaces with students at other colleges that it works in. So, if the Sustainable Food Project puts together, a great active group of kids who want to work with food here, and let's say they say, we want only fried chicken every day, or whatever it may be. Whether it's that, or we want 30% organic, whatever it may be. They decide they want to make some sort of change. Who do they talk to? What happens from there? Sort of in an abstract way.
Yeah, the most effective way to do that is to have some form of committee, whether it's student or it's a larger, more encompassing group that represents the whole community. And then John is the point of contact.
And
John
Joe
gets to make
Greco
those
and
decisions.
Marshall and
Yeah.
you know, we'll all sit in on this meeting.
It's
It
John
happens at
that's
St.
the-
Rose. There's a student association has a food committee, and they meet with our director and sometimes myself and the chef, and we'll sit with him. You know, they'll give him a little list of agenda, you know, the topics they're going to be going over, and sometimes it's late like this, and you know, but you know, we make it a point to be there and address all the issues as well as we can, you know.
But go to your question, because I think, you know, in it are two, either one could be a distraction and one is the point. I don't think it's about who decides, it's about what is what the value. And so the fried chicken is a good, silly example, because that's not going to be the value here. Even if you know, people, I like fried chicken, by the way, but I don't want it every day, you know. And so, what do we really want as a community? What do we really want as a college? And there are going to be differences. There are going to be differences. You guys know there's differences amongst you guys in this room, much less the larger student body. So, what we do want to do is have, and I think what's really great to hear, because I haven't heard them talk, but that our values got expressed in a very macro way. That was my job, and Bill's job, and Laura's job. And I think we did a good job at that. Now we're getting down to what does that mean, and how is it going to manifest itself? And what I said a couple weeks ago, you know, we're going to have to keep working at this. This is not going to roll out and it's going to be right. It's going to be us figuring it out. So I'm really excited at getting a group of people together that deal with this regularly. I have that responsibility now. It's a new responsibility. As I said, when Bill was running it, I didn't have to really do this, and not that I don't trust you guys, and it's not that, but I have to take a more active role now in this as a consumer, literally. So I'd love to be part of this with you guys, and I want some faculty in this as well. Because partly it's not just keeping anyone honest is another way of saying that. It's not about that. It's really about us keeping ourselves attending to this, you know, because all of our responsibilities and, you know, interests, and frankly, you guys have a job to do as being students. Food isn't the only subject here, but we should be working together to make sure that we keep at this subject day in, week out, year in, year out as we go forward. So that's going to be a first job, I think, this term, to get a group together. Mm-hmm. And I'd love us to work together to think. And you may want to keep it as a student group separately, but I'd love to push that even, to think about it. So great. Well, we're already doing it. So you guys have already made this happen. This group is a power here. And so let's keep it, you know, let's move it into this enterprise. You had your hand up before.
There's been hands up over here for a while.
I guess to bounce back to fear a little, I'm a freshman, and last year my high school switched to Aramark for its dining services, and there were a lot of promises made in the beginning of the year about how great it was going to be and all these things that were going to be implemented by the end of the year, and nothing came through. It was a really horrible experience for everyone at my school. And I guess all I've been hearing now is that the proposal was so much better than all the others from Aramark for Bennington, and it's going to be great. And what I think is, like, all these things and plans and ideas that are being put forth are not going to be followed through on, just like my past experience. And I'm just really worried. And I don't know, I just want reassurance that everything we've been promised is going to happen.
Well, I wish I could bring the future to the present, but alas, that is not possible. So we live in a state of the present, anticipating the future. And what I can say, which is not a reassurance necessarily, but it's evidence, that we haven't just sent out an email and then wake up 6 months later. We're investing a tremendous amount of time in this, not just to soothe people's feelings, but in fact to start working. And so this is the beginning of the work, talking. But we're just at the beginning. So let's talk about, I think having a group that's charged with and is part of thinking about feedback. You know better than anybody, even though you're a freshman, that this place isn't going to let a nightmare not be attended to, right? I mean, so we're going to keep talking and seeing how it goes. I don't think they're promises. I really don't think that's what's happening. I think it's we're making commitments. We're making contractual commitments. That's happened. But it's not based on abstractions or keeping our eyes. I don't know if you were here a couple weeks ago, but just to talk a little bit about the process we went through. Bill, Laura, and I went to many colleges to talk to many people, many students, administrators, 3 different vendors, companies. I'm sorry to praise you early in the game, but the other guys weren't even close to what these guys not only did in terms of a document, but also in the conversation, and the way you look into somebody's eyes and you know that they are understanding what you're saying and they show it. So we haven't done anything yet, so it's all in the future still. But I know we made the right decision. I know it's not gonna be perfect either. But I think there's enough reality here now to know that our dining program is really not radically changing. That's a big change, losing Bill. But this guy, I've already gotten to know him, and Bill helped hire him, basically. He's really good. And so food does come down to the people that are doing it. So, I don't mean to go on and on and on, but I'm less concerned, but it doesn't mean I'm not thinking about it. And I have my, where are we going? I don't know. I don't want to have terrible food here either. I don't think we are. I know we're going to have not only the quality of food we have now, but I'm hoping it gets even better in the sense of what we're trying to do, which is these things. So I hope you'll keep being part of it.
Thanks.
Okay.
I don't want to go on with that too much more, but Don and John, do you guys have anything to say on that? It seemed like a question that I think David, you did a very good job of answering it and speaking to it, but it seemed like something that should be addressed from the two of you as well.
I think that one of the nicer things that came out of the visits that David and Laura and Bill made was they had the opportunity to meet clients and meet students who didn't have a vested interest in whether or not we partnered with Bennington, and they still chose us. I think that when you make a decision like that, you could look at the companies of our ilk that provide this kind of service and think that you could probably get similar things from any of the 3 of us, the bigger 3. And I think it does come down to the people that are on the ground. And I can tell you that we tend to place more of an emphasis on the way people behave than necessarily the result that you get at the end of the day. Because, and I believe this myself, if you behave in a certain way, the right way, against whatever your values are, you tend to get the result you want at the end of the day. And I think that by and large, that's one of the things that separates us from the competition. And that's not to say that they don't deliver against promises. Things happen, and for whatever reason, things happen. But I think here you're fortunate to have David and Laura who will keep an eye on us. And you're right. Right now, it's sort of the honeymoon. We're 6 or 7 hours into the real work, and everything's fun. And nothing's gone wrong. A truck hasn't missed a delivery. Like nothing has happened badly yet. And so it is the honeymoon. But from our part, it is incredibly exciting, both personally and professionally, to have partnered with Bennington. And again, it's no assurance that you're going to get what we wrote, but our folks are committed, and we spent a lot of time, as David and Laura have, in developing something that was specific to Bennington and getting commitments from a lot of people that you haven't met, that they're going to provide support as we start to transition over the next couple of years into the final vision for the dining service. And I'll say this too, I mean, like I said at the beginning, I've worked with Jon for 5 years. And you have to have a lot of trust in somebody to sort of give them the keys to the new car, you know? So, I mean, I think
we're in a new car.
With that new car smell.
Yeah, I was going to go with a food analogy, but David seems to have that market cornered. Oh, but it does come down to the people, and it comes down to making sure you have a good relationship and you're talking, and that it's not. It really has to be a partnership. You know, the advisory committee. It can't be a committee that just comes together and it says, here's what dining needs to do, and when we come back next Tuesday, I want it done. Like that's not the way it's going to be successful. You have to come to consensus. You have to have a clear vision about where you're going. Then you have to work together. You know, everybody's going to leave early on with things that we have to get accomplished for the next time we get together if we're going to advance the program. It really, I've been in places where it works as I described first. It's just a task list, and that's not a collaborative relationship. You get much better results when you're together, and I think we're off to a good start.
I know, Forrest, you had your hand up for a while now.
So good.
I have one more big question, but if there's any more, we're shooting to be done around 8. If there's any more, I wanted to. Okay, I wanted to ask about someone alluded to it earlier with Alana did with the other projects that we've been working on, but there's the co-op, which we talked about before. And then the other big one is a student farm that's been developing for the last 3 years. And we're looking at really expanding that, especially looking at this season. And then what we've been working on in the past is that's too much of a pun, building a relationship with the dining hall. Building a relationship with the dining services and trying to use that as our primary market for selling our produce. And because we grew as much squash as we could one year and it was gone in 2 dinners. So there's no way we're gonna run out of a market selling to you guys. But so looking to the future, what is the opportunities for working with produce grown on campus and then looking to expand that even further out of just the little less than half-acre garden that we have there to like a couple-acre garden or maybe some animals or what have you. But looking like not yeah. Well,
these guys, they're Bennington students.
If you look at other colleges around Bennington size in this area, it's not.
Yeah. It's done.
It's not ambitious.
What's ambitious? It's not unique.
You're humble.
But so do you guys have any experience working with on-campus agriculture? And what do you see being potential issues with that model?
I do have experience in some of our schools have had it. We had a school where they grew a lot of radishes, and they wanted to sell us all their radishes. And the truth of the matter is we bought them, and we composted a lot of them because people don't eat a lot of radishes. So I think when you work together, what's that?
We're not going to say. Or
maybe you can sell some radishes.
Maybe let's see what happens. But I think your point. The point is to kind of have a strategy that you go to the field with, right? Like, what can you plant in a way that we can serve meaningfully? You know, we've had places where they had, I wouldn't even call it a farm, I'd call it a garden, and they decided they could make a very high impact by growing basil, and then having a harvest and making and freezing pesto. You know, it just depends what we think we can make the most impact with. If the mission is to serve 2 days worth of squash, then by all means, if we decide together that that's what's important, then that's what we should do. But I think we got to plan it out together so that
How can
can
we
have
do
a high
that?
impact. I think
Because
we
we're looking at putting in a seed order within the week.
when do you have to do that by?
Well, we're hoping to do that
tomorrow.
You know,
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
we have to submit a budget this week.
Well, do it. I mean, because the problem with that question for him is,
yeah, I don't know enough about
he
what's
doesn't
gonna
even know
happen
where
in
the
September.
bathroom is yet,
Yeah.
much less what we're going to be served. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think, but you actually
No, I
don't.
can tell you that that one upstairs in the dining room is awkward.
Right.
Yeah. Right, glass block.
But so, I mean, what you hear is that we can make this work.
Yeah.
Let's again, we keep going back to what we're looking for is we have to build structures now that don't exist. Napkin Notes is going to continue, it's going to flourish, but that's not enough. So we need some formal structure, and we're going to talk, obviously, and figure it out. So don't slow down your seed reporter, but I don't think he can.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts, Bill? Do you have any?
Put in butternut squash. If they don't buy it, I will. Like it's stuff that's safe. That you have time.
Kale.
Yeah.
So
Kale, please.
Yeah, we'll do.
But I'll do more than one variety. Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, let's talk. But yeah, so looking into looking into this season though, like I'm gonna go talk to Joe tomorrow, and I figure that's the easiest person right now to go talk to, just to be like, what are you gonna be able to use, like what.
Yeah, and I think,
what can
and
you work
we
with?
have to talk about the expansion of the farm, and that what we're talking about is now developing this as we go, and not being in isolation so that you have to make a seed order without having.
Yeah.
yeah. There's things that are safe, but it's not my place to say. But potatoes, beets,
Yeah. And that's
winter squash, like those are
beets,
things
yeah,
that
good
you
beets.
have a long
those
time to
sorts
sell
of
them.
things we're looking at are like squash,
Instead of canned beets. Yeah.
Carrots.
Yeah, the harvest is more predictable. You know what's going to happen when there's going to be students here. Like I would really focus on things you can harvest when during
Yeah,
the fall
and that's-
term.
So you already, that's
Yeah,
right.
I feel like
Yeah, we're all the same.
Sorry, we're going to be cooking some squash.
It's gonna be like Bill's parting gift.
Yeah, right. Butternut squash.
5,000 pounds.
One squash, open anything.
Yeah, we'll get you some squash, bro.
Any last words for tonight? We'll be obviously talking more. John's going to be around. We're figuring that out when he's going to be, as he said, kind of around somewhat frequently in the near future, but then in the late spring he'll be here much more. But we have to figure that out.
Yep.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Come on, guys.